Welcome, everybody. Welcome to episode 5 of the Vibe Union podcast. You know it's the spookiest time of the year, baby, and that's why we're all dressed up in these crazy costumes. I'm Wrath, and I'm my own profile picture. Oh, it's so scary.
I'm Mikado, a widow whose husband died. That's too much. And I'm Mikado, a widow whose husband died under mysterium circumstances. Yeah, mysterium circumstances. Yes, my husband died under mysterium circumstances. I love it. English is my first language.
Yo, what's up, fam? So Mikado, that's amazing. And I love your outfit, and I'm going to let you finish. But I'm going to be the greatest president of all time. Of all time. Yeah.
All right. That's the worst or the best intro we've done.
Excused from the podcast.
I'd like to do the whole podcast in that thing, but I tell you that it's real sweaty and awful in there. So I'll say it again. Welcome to Vibe Union Podcast, episode 5. Here we go. We got Mikado. We got Emkew. It's going to be a great one. My name is Wrath. All those things, they're all happening. I would firstly like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners of this land. We are recording on today. Guys, first up, Emkew. How are you? Tell me all about it.
I'm really good. I'm just overcoming a bout of like a fair bit of fatigue today. I feel like I'm either buzzing energetically or fatigued, and this is kind of, I think, the thing of my life. But this one's legit because I woke up at 1:30 in the morning and I was just like indigestion city. So I know I've become old, right? It wasn't even a birthday recently. I'm just becoming old on a day-to-day basis, and that sucks. So I've woken up and I'm like, okay, let me like try to work out how to solve this. I like rub some lavender oil on my temple. Maybe that'll help me sleep. Nah, it didn't work. So I was like, okay, let me go for a walk. Not outside, like just chucked on. I've recorded my script for the Fringe Festival show. So I'm like just listening to it on loop to memorize. I was actually listening to it while sleeping to like osmosis it, you know what I mean? And so I just chucked it on and just did laps of the table downstairs. And by the time I'd racked up about 5K steps, that's when the script ran out. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm tired now. And also my legs really hurt, but I wasn't asleep yet. And I was by no means sleepy. So I stayed up and did some more work, did editing all kinds of stuff. And then it was like, okay, cool. It's 5 a.m. I think I need to sleep now. So my entire system is just like in a state of shock. But my like calves are doing incredibly well because walking in a tight circle does an incredible job, like does quite a number on them. They're going to be burning soon, but right now, right now, that's where I'm at. I'm like,
these puppies are going to be rock solid.
These puppies need a bit of a rest. I'll put them in the kennel tonight. I think they'll be howling. I'm in a hyper-productive yet at the same time fatigued state. So this is good for me. This just sitting here, chatting to people whom I respect and love, talking about some great stuff. I'm in a good place.
I mean, I imagine like
we're happy to have you two. Now you go.
There's a level of I imagine there's a level of stress that's going to be hanging over you until curtains close, pretty much. But I do like that. I do like that state. I mean, it's scary, and you know it's kind of bad for you in some sense. But I feel the most alive when I know there's something lingering in the background. They're like, something's coming, something big is coming.
And it's the finiteness.
Storm.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. It's just electrical. Like I get an email about Fringe and it's just, okay, something's about to happen. It's about to be catastrophic. It's about to be the greatest thing ever. And that I thrive off that excitement. I know people who are like, I hate the idea of not knowing. Like they get notifications from friends. They're like, I don't know what this person wants to say to me. So I'm blessed to be in this position because I fucking love it.
It's funny. Like first I was going to go on a tangent. Mikado, how are you? Before I go off on any tangents, tell me all about it.
I'm good. Thanks for asking, Ryan. Jeez, no, I'm kidding. But I am well. You know what? Sis is doing better than she has for a long time. So, just some personal triumphs in my own life. I think I said on the last university, and that's been like really awesome for me to develop like my creative skills and my critical thinking skills and my creative thinking critical thinking skill, all the thinking skills. But it's been fantastic, and it's really opened my mind up to like a world of visual possibilities and things that I can do with Mikado, and lots of plans and lots of things I'm excited about. Also, I've been losing weight, so I'm taking that win just quietly. This top didn't used to fit me, so I'm like, yes, win, win, win. We love that. Not that it really, I was going to say not that the boys care. I'm like, but I care. This is a win for Mikado. But but other than that, things have been doing really well, and I'm really excited because there's lots of musical projects around the corner. So we can get into that a little bit later. But much like MASH, I very much am loving the electricity of knowing that you're on the path, but not knowing what's coming next. But understanding that you're working towards it and you're making strides to get to the place that you want to be. And that's what I've always admired about like MASH personally, because I don't know, your sense of drive is phenomenal. Not dissing Raph's work ethic. Let me not say that. But yeah, so I think this Fringe Fest opportunity is going to be super mega fantastic. And I know I've already bought my tickets. So what's your excuse, y'all? What's your excuse? Pay what you feel. Come on, support my friend Emkew here. He needs it. He deserves it.
The second one more so, but I do need it. But I do want to interject quickly. I think, out of the two of us, out of the three of us even, like I know for a fact Rath, like work ethic is just leagues ahead. And I'm sure we'll come to this topic in a bit. But in terms of like the promotion of that work ethic, I think I like talk a lot of shit about what I'm doing. Like I just make it known. Rath, on the other hand, is like, yeah, cool. I'm really glad that you chopped up a podcast and uploaded a video to YouTube. I've like mixed 3 albums today and also saved a baby from a burning building using a drone. Like it's just like it's just incredible today. What this guy. Yeah, just today, but the thing is, you won't even say that. So like I really appreciate it. Thank you for the props, but definitely can't not acknowledge what Rath gets done.
Vibe Union, the hard workers, baby. That's what it.
That's it. That's what we're about.
You know.
I think it's interesting seeing perhaps two sides of the same coin here. Of I think I'm quite introverted. Mash, I know that you believe you're quite extroverted. I can certainly see that in both of us. And I think like my sense of that sense of work ethic of like got to get stuff done comes from that, in a sense of like I prefer to be locked in my room, and so I always feel like, well, I've got all the time in the world. I got no excuses to just not plow on and just get through as much as I can. Absolutely to my own detriment. I will not encourage. I don't encourage anyone to have this mentality. It's not good. It's not healthy.
But it gets shit done, and it sounds good too.
However, Rath, you're not going to be spending. Absolutely. I was going to say you're not going to be spending as much time in your room lately, because as of 11:59 tomorrow, baby, we get some more freedoms. Come on, Melbourne. I know everyone is so excited for this. I keep doing this, but I really just feel that. Like it really just feels like, yes, we've been in lockdown for 7 months. Let's go the fuck outside.
I gotta say though, please,
but also
Melbourne,
just to make
Melbourne, don't squander it. Do not squander this opportunity.
Yeah.
we got to do this right. Not to get too political on this podcast, but I just have to make a point about something that really frustrated me, because when the Black Lives Matter protests happened and everyone were freaking out, like, you guys are the reason we're getting in lockdown now. Like, you guys, why are you protesting now? And they were peaceful protests. They were beautiful, peaceful protests, and nothing happened as well. Like there was no outbreaks from it. Everything was fine. And then a couple of days ago, there was anti-lockdown protests and instantly violent. We have assault charges against people because they assaulted cops, and they were hitting the horses. God damn it! I don't need to get too far into it, but come on.
Yeah,
this is ridiculous.
Unnecessary.
And who would have guessed it? Who would
behave, y'all? You're grown-ups. Not me, absolutely. I mean, honestly, no, I don't think anyone really saw 2020 coming around the corner the way that it did. But you know what? I think fortunately we're at the point now that we got through the hardest part. Like we got through all of it, or most of it anyway. We're nearly there. We're like right at the end. And I think for a lot of people, this has been like a massive time of like looking inward and reflection and just like, you know, making the changes and the steps that you've always wanted to put into place, but never really like had the time or dedication or motivation to do so. So I think, you know, for me personally, hitting rock bottom during this lockdown really helped me nowhere else but up. Really, it's true. Not to get off top, but there you go.
That's perfectly on topic. That's life. That's what we're all living.
Yeah. Let's get it.
Now we have gathered here today to discuss something that I know is near and dear to all of our hearts, which is art and the creation thereof, which is what we have dedicated our lives to. I know. Now, something that bothers me quite a lot is seeing young artists come up. And I know I fit into that category very nicely. And I do fit into that category very nicely. But I've been doing it for a little while. I've been making art. I've been a musician for maybe 12 years or so in various ways. And I made a lot of shit. And that's the only reason I can stand proudly by my work now. And so something that bothers me a lot is younger artists, people just starting out, having this sense of perfectionism about their work on a really early stage, because in my eyes, it can really hinder their progress. So do you mind if I just fucking ramble on about this topic for a second?
Launch away,
Jump right in.
Because I'm just going to kind of give my experience of this, I think, as a jumping off point, and then we can see what you guys think about this. Is I, from the very start of producing my own solo work, had a mentality of if I get something out, then I can't touch it anymore. And this has really helped me, I think, move forward really, really quickly. Though I guess 12 years is maybe a bit slow in other people's eyes. So, but whatever, everyone's moving at their own pace. So at the start, I was very dedicated to trying to release a new EP or project maybe once every 2 months, which is something I managed to get through later in my late teens, I think. In which case I went back and deleted a bunch of that stuff. But I meet people now who still do this when they're sitting on their first release and they're like, I can't put it out. I can't even show any of my friends yet because it needs to be perfect. I need to put this out there into the world and it needs to hit. It needs to really take off on day one. While at the same time, I released, this isn't bragging, this is just explaining a workflow. I'm not trying to say like I did all this work, but rather, in that space of time, I would release 8 projects. And then by the end of that 8th project, I would have all these new techniques and all these new failures. Let's say it's basically forcing yourself to learn from these mistakes because you're not toiling over them and trying to fix that mistake. You look back on it and go, cool, that one's over. And now I'm going to move on to the next one. But the next one, you're not going to make the same mistake again. Well, you might. Definition of insanity, it could take hold. But yeah, okay. That's kind of my mentality behind how I got here. Now I'm getting more and more into trying to fine tune things. But Mash, I kind of wanted to ask you kind of what was your mentality when you started and what is your mentality now as you're approaching this is probably the biggest project for you, would you say, in terms of both thematically and the most energy you've put into? So yeah, I think seeing those two mentalities from start to finish would be fascinating to me.
Sure. I really appreciate the question. I guess just to quickly touch on one thing that I really liked in what you said and something that I wanted to touch on as I explain this process is the idea of iteration and reiteration. So I think a lot of people have this sense of like, I'm going to create this thing and it's going to be perfect and then it's done. And then I'm going to create a new thing and it's going to be perfect and then it's done. So yeah, I'll circle back to that in a second. But I come from, this background, especially growing up, like I'm lucky to count my blessings and say that a lot of things that I've tried my hand at in life, I've been able to just kind of pull off, right? And in early years, it's impressive. Like a kid suddenly is speaking a different language. He's picked up the guitar and he's played it for 2 months and he can like do things that his teacher is kind of learning at the same time. And that was pretty amazing as a feeling growing up, but it obviously led to a lot of complacency. The assignment that would take other kids 2 months to do, I would do the night before or the morning of, and I would still get the same, if not better marks. And that, like, I just started resting on these laurels, and it got to this point where it was like a thrill-seeking game for me that, like, what is the bare minimum I can put in to get an output? And so perfection has kind of almost never been on my radar, because just the sense of achievement and validation that I was getting for any effort, like, seemed to far outweigh what perfect was in the eyes of others. And for myself, it was like it was something I had to kind of abandon, because I was getting rewarded time and time again for stuff that wasn't even close to perfect, but getting rewarded as if it might as well have been in the sort of field of applicants. Like, on a bell curve, it might as well have been perfect. So getting to a point of perfection, I guess, was kind of difficult. And then the flip side is then when I try things that I'm not immediately good at, and then I just go, well, this is bullshit. Like, this is obviously not made for me, and I'm not even going to bother with this. Why bother? And rap was probably the first time that was met with that, like, I had that fire inside that, like, no, it can be better. I was getting feedback that said, yeah, it can be better. And I wasn't ready to just go, this isn't for me. Fuck it. Like, I'll go find something else I'm good at and people just kind of give me props for. And I think something that helped quell that sense of perfectionism early on was when I was working with these guys, Hill House Studios. They gave me my first break. They gave me, they were doing their own thing, home studios, recordings and covers. And they said, hey, the producer, Jav K, incredible talent. He produced the beat for this song, Kingdom. And myself and another rapper were going to work on it. So we sort of had it for a week. We wrote some stuff. We were going to have a session. And I wrote like 3 verses, an idea for a hook. And I was like, cool, let me go in. And so I went into the session and I had been practicing like crazy. I was like, I need to get this exactly perfectly right, even though maybe only one of these verses is like what they're after. So I got on the mic. I was like, just run the beat, loop it, and let me see what I can do. So I went through and just recited everything. Like, I've got my back to everyone in the room. I'm just reciting off the thing and what I think the flow should be. And I finish and I'm thinking, like, this is dumb. Like, I slipped up here. My tone could have been better here. This was bad. Why did I sound American at this? Like, I'm hating myself coming off the mic here. And I've turned around and they're like, bro, that song's done. That's it. Like, the other guy to this day hasn't shown me what his verse was, because he was like, you finished that track in that one go. And so that moment of like, oh, right, okay, so it's actually kind of the feel of the thing that makes that moment perfect. Everyone in that moment right then was just like, this is done. And I was so insistent. I was so insistent that, hey, like, I'm not happy with that. I'd like to go back and actually go in and change things. And Jav himself, he was like, dude, like, seriously, leave it as is. There's the demo still floating around of the one take. Like, it gets the job done. Like, I've since gone and re-recorded patches that I just couldn't stand on a like Spotify release. But ultimately that feeling of like being told it's perfect enough kind of got it done for me. So I guess where I want to talk about iterations is after that experience, it then became really hard for me to kind of back that up. Like, I'd done that and that was just kind of in my head. I suddenly was like really tied to this concept of everything needs to be one take. Everything needs to be like flawless and effortless. And something that helped break that down for me was I started doing a series of word of the day raps. Like, I would just get a prompt off of this Facebook group and someone would post a word like Macedonia or engineer. And I would like wake up. I was hella unemployed at that time as well. And I would wake up and I would like use that word as a prompt to just write X number of bars and pick a random beat. And then I would record it and upload it that night. And that practice became super important to me. And again, when I was recording initially, everything needed to be one take. One, because my technology was not good enough to sit and do all the editing stuff. But 2, because I still had that thing of like, I needed to be perfect. I needed to be flawless. And as I did that thing and the sense of one take perfectionness just started to run me into the ground, I was like, there needs to be a better way. There needs to be a sustainable way that I can create stuff and elevate my creations that are not about perfection. They're just about getting the best thing done today that I can get done. So something that's kind of been driving me since that I, just sort of put into words for this is today's perfection is tomorrow's practice. And that's what I guess kind of I've been trying to get to with this. Whatever for me has felt like perfect in the moment, the very next day I hate it. Like, I'm listening to Detour now and I'm like, I know I could have done this better. I know this, that. But I'm glad I put it out there, because those things that I know I could do better, I'm going to do better on the next release because there's going to be a next release. There's going to be new music always. Like I need to be looking forward to the future. So that's that sense of iteration and drive that has helped me put that perfection hat kind of fully in the basket. And get it to there. So I know I know you were asking about the fringe stuff, but that's kind of my journey with that relationship with perfection. And I wanted to especially bounce off that iteration idea that you said. But yeah, Casey, I'd love to hear what you think on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I was really loving what you were saying because I actually wrote a note and you kind of touched on it with what you were saying about perfection versus like elevating your artistry and being able to elevate your creations through practice, through review, and through self-critique, but in a way that's not self-sabotaging. I think being able to make that distinction is super important because for me, I'm like my own worst critic, and most of us are. We're artists. We hate ourselves for the most part. I'm kidding, but there's a real and we're all just like, well, kinda get it, just not really. Anyway, but even that point that you made, if I'm no good at it, there's no point in doing it. I've very much been there before because, for me, I'm a vocalist and an MC. So I've done, 10 years of vocal training and plus, here or there, musical theatre, jazz, contemporary. There's lots of different, sounds and influences that I've had to undertake to develop my voice, to craft my voice. And for the longest time, I'd only focused on singing and only focused on being a vocalist. And it wasn't until about like 3 years ago, that I really stepped my toe into the world of hip hop. Like I'd always enjoyed hip hop and I've always listened to hip hop, but not something that I'd ever personally participated in. So for me, it was really hard to go from like 10 years of knowing what I'm doing and being really skilled and really talented and not having to put in that much effort to going to a skill that I not necessarily was bad at, but definitely did not have the practice and had the tools that I might have now to articulate my artistic message and to be able to communicate what I want to communicate. Because I think ultimately, I've said it once, I'll say it again, that like hip hop especially, I feel is the ultimate storytelling medium. There is so much narrative interwoven into what people say and how people say it and how it's presented to people. So, because I think for the most part, especially like, the real shit, a lot of people listen to it because there's an element of relatability there. It's not perfect. You can hear the rawness in how something is delivered or presented. And for me, those are the songs that I am most drawn to, and therefore are the ones that I feel like I should make, because I don't know, I think for me, emotion and organic topics, like they can't be perfect by nature. And that was something that I tried really hard to let go, because it's difficult to have like an idea of and an estimation of your own skills in your head, and then go to do something, and then it's like a massive blow to the ego if you can't do it, because you're like, oh, but I thought I could, and it's like, it doesn't mean that you're never going to get it, doesn't mean you won't get it tomorrow. It just means at this point in time, this is your skill set. Evaluate what you're not doing well, what you are doing well, what you could be doing better. You stop, start, continue. We love that. What you can end, what you can. I very much related, to being able to elevate your creations and understanding that perfection is a state of mind. It's a temporary state of mind, because, you'll listen to something and you're like, oh my God, this is fire. This is the best thing I've ever released. It's the best thing I've ever written. I know I do it at least once a day. I'm like, guys, this is fire. This is absolute fire. Like we got to pump this up. We got to get this out to the people. Always, right? Yeah. But the thing is that perfection doesn't bloody exist. So tomorrow when I listen to it, I hate it. I'm probably going to hate it. If not tomorrow, maybe like, I don't know if anyone else does this, but if I release something or record something, I have to listen to it like 1,000 times, and then I'll get sick of it and be like, all right, we have to make the next thing. I'm disgusting. This is awful. I'm degenerate. I hate this. But today's perfection is tomorrow's practice. I very much resonate with that because I think there's always something to improve upon and there's always something to learn. And something I want to touch on a little bit later is the idea of ego in and letting go of ego in what you create.
Yeah.
I just wanted to jump off
Anybody
that.
got any points or right?
Yeah. So just with the hang on, let me chase down my train of thought. Oh my God, I had it right there. Okay, so yeah, your point. So I got it. All right, your point about people being the most fascinated by and relating the most to the more organic and the more natural sounding material. I'm a very firm believer, and I think I think the reason I come back to this all the time is because this is come from a place where I think when I started, I was making music that was a bit more scared to inhabit its own lane or to be itself. I was either trying to emulate or trying too hard to be its own thing, which is, I know, a bit of a contradiction to what I just said, but in a sense that like I was scared that I didn't have my own voice. And so because of that, I would force a voice that I thought I was supposed to have, but didn't actually come naturally, didn't have much fun with it. And I think this is probably a problem that happens for a lot of younger artists who are starting out, because it is the hardest at the start because you more than likely have fewer people around you. And we are very fortunate right now to have a crew of like-minded individuals who are making similar music. And so when I put down a verse on a track with our crew Vibe Union, I'm much more forgiving of myself because either I have a couple of people going like, fuck yeah, bro, that was sick. Or I hear them on the track, and when I listen to the track, I hear their voices. I don't focus as much on mine. When I listen to one of my own tracks, I'm hearing just my own stuff. And because of that alone, often with a Vibe Union track or be it anything with any collaboration with anyone else, there is that sense of energy because you're working with somebody else. It's inherent that like you're going to bounce off them a little bit. And I think the listener can hear that energy in every little thing that you do. And this is why I think perfectionism can kill your work, especially, again, I say especially early on, because probably you are your worst critic and you are also by yourself for the most part in those early days. So you're constantly chiseling away at these things, doing take after take, redoing things because like, oh man, it's not hitting right, doesn't have that right impact. But for me, it's usually been at the start of the creation, didn't have the energy to carry it through to the end and ready for release. And that was something that changed over time thanks to being surrounded by you guys. But I can listen back to those things and I can hear the doubt in my voice on that very first take. And so my perfectionism, trying to get it to the next level ready for release, it's like trying to record on your phone in a noisy bus station, trying to record your verse and then put it onto your album and mix it in and be like, why isn't it coming through right? It's because you recorded it in a bus station. What are you thinking? It's a terrible example, but like polishing a turd. You're polishing a turd. And for me, this is maybe a little bit further away from perfectionism, but for me, that was my particular case of I didn't have that confidence at the start and didn't have that energy at the start. And so then to try and get it to that next point, the level of perfectionism that I had at the time was just like dragging me down because I could not polish that turd of a take. And thank God at the start, I did have that mentality of like, all right, cool, fuck it. Release it, move on, learn for the next one. And it took me a few times to get to this point when I can go in with that with a bit more energy. But anyway, that's that's what
I think the important thing is also knowing how to walk away from a project and knowing when to walk away from a project. If you need to, like, because I feel like I get like super square-eyed about something if I'm just like really intently looking at it for so long. And that's where it's absolutely crucial to ask for feedback. Like, I know it's hard, like for some people be like, yeah, it's lit, bro. But like, ask questions, like really push what you want to know from someone about your music, because the thing is that you have your own sonic palette. You have certain things that you listen for and certain things that you expect of your own, for example, your own voice, or you expect of your own mixing or whatever it might be. And if it doesn't sound like that, there's an alteration of, the perceived product and the actual product. So when you get like you collect that feedback and you listen to the advice and to the people of, for example, like Vibe Union that have experience and expertise in like the field that we're all sort of operating in. It's really fundamental to your growth as an artist, because how are you going to get better if you don't know what to fix? And especially when ego becomes involved, sometimes people have the opinion that my work is perfect, don't criticize it. I've never done anything wrong in my life. Please, please don't come for me because I've not done anything wrong. Don't say anything. Great. Okay. It's great. It's great. And if you don't say it's great, then I hate you. And that's just unrealistic. That's unrealistic. When you release art, when you release anything in a public forum, it is. It's bloody unrealistic, I tell ya. Sorry, that was completely unexpected, but I love that. We're a wild
card. It's my favorite parts.
But when I just say things, of course, that's my favorite part too. But collecting that feedback to loop it back, because I always get off topic. You know, I'm the runaway train. But to bring it back on topic and about like, you know, emulation and not having your own voice, that's where collecting feedback from multiple different people with different sonic palettes and different tastes and different interests is really important, because they're listening for different things. You know, they're attuned or accustomed to listening out for completely different things. And there's so many times where I've brought something to the table where someone's been like, oh, you know what, have you thought about doing this? Or, you know, did you think about maybe taking a couple words out? Or did you think of maybe starting it on the downbeat instead of the upbeat? Or just, you know, things that are maybe, you know, sort of minute. But if you ask someone who kind of, I'm saying in the example that you ask someone who knows what they're talking about, you can always ask us, please DM us your stuff. I'd be happy to give you some, not criticism, what's the word? Feedback, please, because that's the point. This is a community. This is a community. And ultimately, at the end of the day, perfectionism is elusive. It's an illusion. It's amorphous. It's a fucking blob in the atmosphere. Who cares what perfection is? The point is that we're making art today to connect with somebody tomorrow. And, you know, I think it's really important that we don't get too caught up in that sort of isolation of thought and idea and opening yourself up to collaboration, because a lot of people are quite closed-minded about collabs. A lot of people don't like to collaborate because it makes them feel insecure or inferior about their own skills. And I think a lot of people don't even seek reference material because they feel threatened. So I think the most important thing in this sort of discussion about like perfection is really just the ego, and about learning to separate yourself from what you make and being able to let go just a little bit more.
That's a great place to...
I'm done, I promise.
No, that's beautiful. I love that. I love that because that's a nice, real good, strong closing statement as I bring in everyone's favorite segment, an ad break. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy this ad. Boom.
You.
My name is Spooky Gary. Gouging prices and eyes famously for years, but unfortunately, I, like many others, have suffered the wrath of the COVID gods. With social distancing laws staying as unsanitary for kids to be shoving their grubby little hands in bowls full of strangers' candy, Halloween is officially cancelled. And for me, no Halloween means no Christmas for my little Spooky Gary here either. I'm sorry, son. But that's okay, because though my life has been irreversibly devastated by this virus, I can pass the savings on to you. After all, Halloween 2021 is right around the corner. We've got a warehouse full of China's second most popular export, plastic paraphernalia of the festive kind. And egad, is that a skeleton? What's that on this toe tag? Only $3.99? Boy oh boy, that's got my bones rattling. Oh! Man, that's almost as scary as what my ex-wife's divorce lawyer did to me. I have nothing beyond these jack-o'-lanterns and sugary treats. But hell, you can have it all for a store-wide... like 95% off. Oh, God. Oh, man, what else? You want this computer or my watch? Do you like this belt? Honestly, like anything you can see, I'll sell it to you. Are you feeling lonely? Because we can head out back and I just go to town on that fucking big... So, yeah. You can find us at 665 Gray Street. I know, so bloody close. My name is Spooky Gary. Come on down to this graveyard of a man's dreams and disembowel what's left of this small business.
So we've spoken about how we brush up against perfectionism and how we've each encountered it. But I guess something that would be useful to dissect a bit further is what are kind of the causes for perfectionism. And in preparing for this chat and in thinking about what we've discussed, I kind of see two things. And striving for perfection, striving for like the best that you can do, I think is an awesome thing. But there's a difference, I believe, and this is where the causes kind of come in. And in my experience so far, I've kind of seen two major causes for perfectionism and that sort of striving for it. The first is very much about intent and deliberateness. And I know that each of us have a lot to unpack in that domain. I want this thing to have this exact impact. And the only way that's going to happen is if this is this way, this works in this way. And that's very specific and about deliberateness. You guys know me when it comes to like doing shit deliberately, that's what I'm about. But there's the flip side, I think, that people mistake for perfection what is actually pedantry and nitpickiness. And that, to me, like, I guess this is where I kind of want to launch into is the, I guess, sense of being idle, not having enough in your brain that like is stimulating. Like your brain just needs a constant flow of information and stimulation to feel like it's doing something. And I can give you the evidence of this because if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, like hit pause. And just wherever you're sat, wherever you're listening, whatever you're doing, just like sit with your like hands crossed for 5 minutes. And immediately you will begin to notice, I promise you, you'll begin to notice all the things around you, especially about yourself, that are wrong. Like you will just have like really, you start to get nitpicky about stuff. And in the same way, if you've only got this like one project that you're really like griping on, and especially for new artists, this is something I've been through. If there's just the one thing that is occupying all of your mind space, you will pick holes in it like Swiss cheese. And so that thing of pedantry is what comes into play when you're idle. And I think I've had clarity on that concept through these lockdown periods where I'm walking around the house and I don't really know what to do or what to work on. And suddenly I'm like rearranging pot plants by 2 degrees because the sun kind of hits them nicer now. And things like that start to happen. And you go, oh, right, that's not perfect now. That's just satisfied a moment of a little niggling anxiety and a bit of pedantry. So I guess I wanted to hear from you guys. What do you think about that notion of pedantry versus perfectionism?
Well, I actually had this thought as you were talking earlier about kind of at the moment you feel like you're riding by the seat of your pants in coming up to this gig. And some of my most chaotic moments in my life have been also absolutely my most focused. I had this theory for a long time that when you meet someone who's been in the hospitality industry for a long time, working in restaurants, working in bars or what have you, and they do the late night shifts, they're possibly like taking shots behind the bar, maybe doing some cocaine, what have you. I'm not going to tell them how to do their jobs. I'm also, by the way, I have been
just a casual Friday night, whatever.
Yeah. I have worked in hospitality for nearly 10 years. So I know that feeling because I like that feeling a lot. And I thought for a while, I had this theory that those people who have been in it for like 30 to 40 years who just live hospitality, the same people in a different setting though, who would love to go skiing down the slopes of Mount Everest or jumping out of an airplane or something like that. Because in that moment, there is nothing, there's no thoughts. You can't think. It's that fight or flight mentality, not mentality, what is the flow state is what I'm looking for. Flow state. You get into that flow state and your inner dialogue shuts the fuck up. And I think this is the biggest hurdle for making artwork is because you generally do it in a quiet environment where that inner dialogue is just screaming at you constantly. And I used to love when I was trying to be an artist, but I also worked in hospitality, especially when I worked in an old theater that was also a bar, cafe, actual movie theater, live venue, all these different things, restaurant. And I was also doing all those things at the same time. I was flipping burgers, running the movie, scooping the ice creams, running coffees, pouring drinks, doing everything all at the same time because we were grossly understaffed. And all at the same time, on my days off, I would be.
Isn't that always the way, though?
Is always the way, and it's the most fun in a sense. It's dangerous. Don't do it. But those days, the days that I had off to make art, those were the days. This time period that I'm talking about, that was the time when I was releasing an EP maybe once every 2 months. even though I didn't have the time, I was working like 72 hours at this place and then going home to make beats. And because I got home and I made beats and I was a bit drunk from work and I was tired and I just didn't have any time as well. But I had that mentality of like, I don't have the time. I just have to get it done and move on. And then I have to go back to work for another 13-hour shift. And that meant that I didn't get to second guess myself all of the time. And so I think, this is another time in my life, funnily enough, that I have all the time in the world thanks to lockdowns. But luckily for me, I have Vibe Union and a few other projects that enable these other things that I have to get done every single day. So when I do have time to work on my own music, I don't have time. I don't have the luxury. Well, I do. I do have the time. I do have the luxury. All right. But it's a lot. It's not as bad as it could be because I got these other things kind of hanging in the background that I got to get this done, got to mix a podcast, and then I can work on my music. And so that knowledge alone means I don't go through and pick the best kick drum out of 500 kick drums. I go through and find the first 3 and go, that one, fuck it. That'll be great. And I move on faster for that reason. I find that one of the best things to have is a deadline and a sense of urgency to your music. Yeah. Mikado, how about you? What's how do you prefer it?
Yeah. To just jump off that, like I very much like understand that whole like making art is a privilege for the time poor thing because like, very, very much like you, hospo, retail, two sides of a similar coin, long hours, stupid working conditions sometimes, you're doing all kinds of bullshit. Like it's long, it's mentally taxing, it's physically taxing. I mean, my calves are absolutely like steel though, let's just say. Thank you, retail. Thank you. But besides my rock hard calves, I will say that, being in retail and also studying and also, trying to maintain a social life and also maintaining Vibe Union and also maintaining some other crews that I'm a part of and also trying to have a life and also this and also that, blah, 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 also. It's a lot. Like it feels like you don't have time. So the time that you do have and that you do make for your art becomes special and it becomes very valuable. So, like Rai was saying, like you don't necessarily argue semantics. What's a semantic?
It sounds like a Lord Semantics.
Lord Semantics. But, you don't have that time to argue Lord Semantics with yourself because it's like, all right, I need to get to this end product because I really don't have time this week or whatever it is because I literally just live my life like week by week because I don't have time to think about anything else but a week ahead like in front of me. Yeah. So I think for me, when I sit down and I create and in those times, like obviously COVID excluded, is when, music and making my music becomes a privilege for me and I spend that time and I choose things wisely and I choose it concisely. But, I usually just go with my gut or what I feel the first time because I think the other thing too is that we're all so concerned with how we sound and how, people perceive us is that, it's also important to listen to your gut and what feels right because, if it feels right, it's right. If it doesn't feel right, it's wrong. And, as simple as that sounds, I really do believe that. So, in terms of answering your question about pedantry versus perfectionism, I think, that MASH presented to us is that, pedantry is very much about that whole perceived self that I was talking about before. You're really just making decisions to satisfy that part of your brain. You're like, okay, it's got to sound like this, it's got to sound like that. And if I do this, and if I layer my vocals in this way, and if I bring the beat in here, and if I cut it away here, then it's going to sound, technically how I want it to be. And I think you do need a level of, attention to detail and things like that, 100%. Not denying that at all. But where, that sense of perfectionism comes from, and I think that real altruistic motive that people like us have is that, we want our art to be the best that it could physically be because we enjoy what we do so very much. And it really becomes a joy when you're taking time away from things that, make you money and things that, like financially support you and fulfill you in other ways to do something that just fulfills your soul. So if you're doing something that fulfills the soul, fulfills the self, what is perfectionism really? Because the only person ultimately that you have to satisfy is yourself. really, if you think about it. But I know I'm sounding like real like wisdom teachings, but it's not that. All I'm trying to convey, what I'm trying to convey really is just that, you know, for me, I've been sitting on an album for 2 years. I've been 2 whole years. I know. Carter calling the kettle black, pot, whatever, you know, hypocrisy, massive. But but learning, again, English, first language, can you believe it? And I'm a scholar too, blows my mind. But, you know, to be able to satisfy yourself and to create things with just a pure love and a pure intention to make it as good as you can, whilst also knowing when to let go and also knowing when the project has like hit its not expiration, but the point where you might need to review it or need to analyze it, because there's songs that I wrote literally 2 years ago that, you know, were reflective of my skills of 2 years ago, were reflective of my talents of 2 years ago, my interests, my mentality, my mindset. And now 2 years later, I've developed, I've grown, and, you know, humble brag, fuck, whatever. I'm kidding. But, you know, after all that time and after, you know, seeking that path, now I'm at a point where I've gone back and I've started rewriting those songs and adding elements. And as Emkew said earlier in the show, it's about knowing when to revisit your content and knowing that it's okay. If it's up on the shelf, it doesn't have to stay there. You can revisit it. You can say that 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, who cares? Music doesn't expire. Talent doesn't expire. Passion doesn't expire. So really, if you think about it like that, then you at this point in our careers as local artists, we have nothing to lose. So why not release it and then come back to it later? Who cares?
I really love what you said in there, and it kind of brings us full circle to what I was talking about before, is that shift from nitpickiness because you've got nothing better versus purpose. And I think both of you touched on that really critically. Like, you know, there's pedantry, there's perfectionism, and deciding where you sit between the two comes down to purpose. Rai, you said it really well when you're talking about, are you just making music with your mates? Like, are you just kind of there to have a good time? You just need to get a beat out that the rappers can then write some stuff on, and then you kind of start building it up a bit more. Because I've definitely had producers that are like, yo, bro, I want to make a beat for you, man. I love how you rap. I want to make this beat for you. It's going to be fire. And like 18 months later, they're like, yo, I'm still working on it, man. I'm trying to find the right sound. Like, I'm trying to find this. because they don't get the concept of a placeholder, and they're holding it to such a high standard. And maybe their purpose is like, oh, if I give him this, he's going to make like this incredible thing, and it's going to elevate us both. And we got to like, so it's got to be perfect. And maybe that's his purpose, and that's why he's trying to strive for it. But I'm inclined to think it's that nitpickiness, and they've put so much pressure on themselves. So in terms of purpose, I think I just want to quickly talk about in the context of my Fringe Festival show. And I'm at an interesting crossroads, because obviously my show is very much born of the experiences I've had of being a third culture kid, which is a sort of a term used to describe someone who born somewhere else or raised with a given culture in the home, and then, you know, exposed to a very different culture in the land in which they're living. And that's my story, you know, growing up Pakistani behind closed doors, and then I go out into the world and I'm Australian. And that story to me is really important for me to tell, but it became more important for me to tell last year when I put on a performance kind of using some of the music and material, but like rapping in my own language, and it was as part of a cultural festival. And I had like families and young people come up, and I'm talking to essentially like 5-year-old or 10-year-old me, and they're like, thank you. Like, you know, their parents are like, oh, you know, it's so exciting for them because someone who looks like them is up on this stage. Someone who looks like them, someone who speaks their language is rapping in that language here in Australia. Like, you know, it was great for me to hear my own language as like a mid-20 or someone like that. So that purpose suddenly became quite elevated. And it's like, I need to tell the story, and I need to tell it well. And that sense of purpose is really strong for me. So then getting it right is more important than getting it done. And now it's that timeline crunch where it's like, you know, that deadline crunch of, okay, but I need to be able to record this in 15 days' time. There's a certain point at which I need to sacrifice on exactly perfect and have contingencies in place, because it's going to be, you know, recorded in kind of almost a one-shot sort of situation in like a theater. I need to get it right. But in the back of my head, I've got contingencies, and that takes the pressure off, the edge off. Even though my sense of purpose is so grand, I need to accept that striving for perfection is not possible because there's a set date to record on, and the version of perfect that I can accept is ultimately what is going to be perfect on the end result. So that's my thoughts on purpose, and I just wanted to kind of hear how that's manifested for each of you, and so either of you kind of take that away.
Well, I like that you found a much clearer purpose, but I also think your purpose. So one thing that really came to mind when we were talking about this off mic kind of preparation was finding where you think finding out what the purpose of your music is in terms of the scale of your audience, the scale of that music. Because I think, especially, I've been talking primarily about people who are working by themselves in their room alone, right? And that's very much been my case, as it is for many other people. And when you're in that case, when you're in the situation, who are you going to compare yourself to? You're comparing yourself to the greats. You're going to compare yourself to the Kendricks and the Kanyes and the other rapper that starts with K. Is there another one that fits that bill?
Lil Kim.
Sure, close enough.
Yes, that's a good one.
So because of that, though, you're not only comparing your sound and your technical abilities to people who have lived this life, who have done this thing at such a level for so long that it's just insanity to compare yourself to those people. But also you're comparing the scale of your art to those people. So some random dude in Melbourne, Australia is for some reason going to come out with an album that could rival a Kendrick Lamar in terms of impact. It doesn't make any sense culturally because there's so many other things going on. So I've had that mentality ever since I was a little kid, that I was looking up to Jack White and I was looking up to Green Day and all these other bands and thinking, oh, well, I'm going to be a rock star. I know I'm going to be a rock star. From year 10, I knew that deep in my heart, I'm going to be on a stage playing for hundreds of thousands of people, which I still have that mentality a little bit, which it still does impact my music to a degree that I want it to have a lasting and timeless feel and impact to it. But coming to work with a crew like Vibe Union, or even just having more friends surrounding my music, it can bring it back down again that like, I don't need to make a beat that is going to blow everybody away in the entire world. I don't need to make an international seller. All I need to do is blow Dilly Dave away. I just need to blow Emkew away. I just need those guys to bop along to it, and I'm going to feel that same sense of accomplishment, if not more so.
You always get it.
Making music with your friends is such a valid reason to make music, and not that it's lesser than making international hits, but rather it's a sense of focus that is actually achievable. And same with, I think, Kendrick, I don't think is making music with the very sole intent of I'm going to be the biggest artist of all time. He's making music because he wants to communicate with his friends and family back home in Compton. And so this is what came to mind when you're talking about Third Culture Kid. It is to another, it's to a higher degree than I'm just going to make some beats with my friends and throw it out there. But it's still that sense of focus that, yes, it gives you more perfectionism in a sense because you want it to be the best it can be. But I think it also takes some of the edge off because you can actually see it. You can actually visualize the impact and the scale in a way that actually makes sense. And for most people, when they're first making music, they're thinking that it's going to just blast off into the stratosphere and be the biggest track that's ever existed. I mean, I don't think everyone has that real. I don't think we have that actual expectation, but it's still sitting in the back of our heads, and that is always going to kind of drag us down. And so, yeah, just finding that place in the world that you think your music actually fits. What is its actual goal? Who is it actually for? Is it just for you? Is it just for you to enjoy? Because also that's another great reason. If that is the main goal for your music, there's a fantastic reason. And then you can actually be as perfectionist as you like because it's solely for you to listen to. If other people enjoy it, fucking sick. But you didn't make it for that reason anyway, so you don't care otherwise. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's kind of my take on that. Mikado, thoughts
Absolutely.
on that?
I think, well, I was going to say there's a real power in setting and exceeding your own expectations. And I think when we create and we talk about, setting goals and like, where do we want to be? And I thought that was fun too. But when we talk about where we want to be and where we want to go and like what the end result is, a lot of people, say, I want to blow up, I want to be big, I want to be the next Kendrick, I want to be the next Drake, blah, 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 who cares, not to do the cliche like, oh, I want to be the first me. But I think, when creating music, a lot of there's different factors you need to consider. And I think those important factors are intention, impact, and result, like Raph was saying. Like, your intention is almost as important as your impact as end result. A lot of people are done and be like, well, I want to be big, so I'm just going to emulate what those people are doing, and I'm just going to try and jump on that train and move where that's going because that's a proven model of success. And I think that's when you're trying to like really mimic it and copy someone's trajectory. That's where you kind of lose yourself and you lose your purpose and you lose your intent. And then when I became an MC, I didn't really want to consume that much reference material. I didn't really want to hear what other female rappers had to say, because at that point in time, I was like, oh my God, I am so insecure about my skills. I tried to deepen my voice, make it higher, do all these different things to try and like meet this status quo of whatever it might be. But ultimately, I feel like I'm the best in what I do because there is no one on this earth that can do Cardo. There's no one on this earth that can do Carter. There's no one on this earth that can do Emkew. There's no one on this earth that can do Raph. There's no one on this earth that can do Vibe Union. Mm-hmm. And the point is not to get caught up in the diverse sort of sea of restrictions surrounding, your work and setting parameters for what constitutes the best, because ultimately it's irrelevant after all of it's said and done. Constricting yourself into like, okay, I'm the best if I do this, this, and this. It's not really, I don't feel like anything can really succeed or be like super fruitful that way. I think if we're talking about this whole idea of perfectionism, like and sort of, putting the happy little rainbow on this conversation, I think, taking away that perceived step one, like not focusing on the end result, purely focusing on the journey and how you got there, and even writing notes, documenting it, take it from an academic perspective, a literary perspective. If you like note taking, there is such a visual aspect to how I make my music, and like it involves literally sheets of journals and brainstorms and doodles and things like that, and allowing yourself to indulge in it's okay to involve yourself in the creative process that works best for you if it gets the output that you desire, that you want. And I think the important question that we need to ask ourselves, like Ryan and Emkew have posed, is, why making what we're making? Where are we trying to go? What are we trying to achieve? Because for me personally, I feel in my bones that I want to get somewhere big, and I want to be like a really big voice in hip hop in Melbourne. And I know that I have the capability to do that. However, I also have to know that I'm not there yet. I'm on the path. There's always a lot to learn. And a lot of people think, well, my output is good enough now. Like if it's comparable to X, Y, and Z big guy, and they're all popping off. So if my thing is as good as theirs, well, therefore my thing should pop off too, right? And that's not really the case. You have to connect with your audience. What do your audience want from you? Because I tune in to Emkew for what Emkew does. I tune into Raph for what Raph does. And I think it's important to understand and be critical of what you consume and how that affects your art ultimately. I don't know if that was too off topic, but there you go.
It's a good tip to carry on in life. And I was going to say, like, as we started to bring this conversation to a close, what's sort of your kind of one thing to combat perfectionism? What's something that someone listening to this can try to incorporate into their life to start doing that today and find that their process changes and they move further from perfectionism, but perhaps become more prolific if that's their goal?
I'd say a little combination of two things is, first of all, making sure you enjoy the process, because the end product is so infrequent. If you're making music or any kind of artwork, that feeling of when you finish a piece, that's so exciting. It's the best feeling, right? But it's so infrequent in terms of just pure timeline. If it takes a week to make a track or a week to make an EP or what have you, and then you've really got a second. There is one split second where it finished. And then it's done, and then you've kind of got this thing at the end. But there's only that one split second when you've finished it properly. There's that final through the ribbon, and you've kind of run across the finish line. So if you didn't enjoy the run, if you didn't enjoy that process, that was a bit of a waste. You need to make sure that the process is really enjoyable, that you're in love with that beyond everything else. And also, one last thing for me is no one gives a shit about you. Remember that the audience doesn't care if you fuck up at this lower level. It sounds kind of condescending or like putting you down, but it's such a relief, I think, to realize that the worst case scenario is people will forget your bad track. But the best case scenario is that you'll put out a good track and they will remember you. But until you're at the level of these greats, no one's going to be nitpicking every little track and every little mistake and treating you as if like, oh man, you really fucked up there. They'll just like listen to 30 seconds, go, no, next one. And they will forget. They won't even remember which artist produced it. If you release something fire, it'll be remembered. But if you release something crap, you might learn a shitload from that track, but everyone else isn't going to remember. So don't worry about it. There's literally no risk to putting it out. That's my takeaway.
Awesome. Kato, what you got?
Absolutely. Well, I was going to say, I mean, look, I feel Wrath encapsulated the message of this podcast pretty well. But what I will say is that, learn to love your work and also learn to let it go. I think there's a really important lesson in being able to let your work at that point in time when it was created, because I feel like everything that we do is like a little time capsule of like, our skills and our talents and everything in that particular point in time. So it's really easy to be able to go back and remember specific events and times and things that led you to creating that content and how in the future what you want to take from that and make it better. And this whole idea of it's not that deep. It's not that deep. Just, I think for me, when I started getting more confident about my content and being able to create things that connect and resonate with people and that they enjoy, because believe me, there's so many demos that I don't show to people because I blew a note or something like that in the demo recording. And I'm just like, oh, because of that one blown note, this whole thing is shit. I can't show it to anyone. And people be like, oh, they didn't even notice that I fucked up the note, or I was sharp, or I was flat, or whatever it was. And at the end of the day, like, it really, like, does it matter? Does it matter? Because, the art has served its purpose. It has done what it's meant to do. And if you want to take that and then repurpose it for something else, like, you definitely recycle your work, recreate. But all I'm going to say is love your work, love it dearly, but also love it enough to be able to let it stand on its own and learn from it and be honest with yourself, really. I say that at least once a podcast, but there you go.
It's beautiful. It's a
the
great
whole
message.
Amazing. Cool. Oh, that's so good. I've got, I don't know how I top that, but I'll go to a tried and tested moment from my childhood to kind of give you my advice. I want to draw on the character of Cell from Dragon Ball Z. And now that I've said that, I think the following statement will make sense to you. Perfection actually stops and gets in the way of evolution. And it depends on which one you want. But it was either Cell or it was Frieza that's like, this isn't even my final form. And when you hear that from an artist, like, I love, as cliche as it is, but when a rapper posts something of like, this isn't even my best shit, like, I'm getting better every day, like, we growing, we doing this thing. I'm like, as cliche as that is, at least you get it. Like, you get that is a fact. Anyone that's like, this is my best shit ever, that's it, we're done, we out, see you later, we're going out on top, like, you've missed the point, you've missed the boat. So constant evolution. So in terms of that, like, the advice that I want to give comes from like two totally different domains. One is that of business and one is from boxing or mixed martial arts. The business comes from Facebook, where their apparently like unofficial internal slogan was move fast, break stuff. Now, when you're a giant tech juggernaut, of course you can do that. But if you watch, and you've probably had this happen to you as a user, shit breaks. Like, you click on a button and it just doesn't work, or something suddenly new has popped up and yours looks different to, when you last used it and the next time you use it. And it's because they are just constantly running all these experiments, and what works becomes the next thing, comes into the next evolution or the next iteration. And the more you can work reiteration into your work ethic, the sooner you're going to evolve to a version of yourself that looks closer to your idealized archetypal perfect as an artist. The other one is in a similar vein. It comes from Tim Kennedy, who I heard on a podcast with Tim Ferriss. And he talks about what his mantra is when he goes into train for mixed martial arts. It's hurry up and fail. He will go into any training session and he will go to the point where he fails. Like he's like, my training actually starts once I get, grappled, once I get taken to the ground, once I get pinned. It doesn't start until that has happened. So there's people who train and build up to their absolute extreme. And then they're like, okay, that was enough of that session. And then maybe I'll go one step higher. He's like, no. Until my muscles are aching, until everything is done, I haven't even started training. And now that I suck, now that I'm a baby at this again, now is when I'm kicking off for real. So I would, those are two pieces of advice or two little phrases that bounce around my brain a fair bit, where it's just like, hurry up and fail. I'll come into the booth to record a demo. I'm just going to keep rapping multiple times until I've messed it up so badly that listening to it hurts. And now it's like, okay, what hurts about this specifically? And now let me do the version of it that I really definitely need to do. So don't shy away from imperfection in the hunt for perfection, because generally that's where you're going to find the things that help you evolve and grow in that vein. So, I've learned a lot from each of you in this conversation as well to get that. Yeah, push through.
Well, that's beautiful. God damn, what a way to end it off. I love how much advice is given on this podcast and how much mysticism.
The warm and fuzzies are real here. Absolutely.
So real.
And now it's for our
take us out, Ryan.
It's for our favorite and closing segment, which is Show Us What You Got, which is not the real name of the segment because obviously it's copywritten. But I want to hear
what you got.
I want to hear what people are working on. And I think, Mash, we've spoken a lot about your upcoming show with the Fringe here in Melbourne. Mm-hmm. So why don't you give us a little taste? I want to hear it.
Absolutely. So yeah, thank you. For anyone that is, still questioning, like, what's going on? What's this Fringe thing? I'm really excited to be telling the story of kind of the life of someone with a bit of cultural dysphoria and placing myself. So it incorporates storytelling. It incorporates songs that you may have heard and some unreleased music as well. And it also incorporates poetry. And this is kind of my first sort of foray into telling some poems to tell stories. This one takes place in a post 9/11 world in a high school where kids have watched Team America and they've made up their mind about this brown Muslim kid and what he must be and how they must respond to him, and the feelings that I kind of take away from that. So thank you for hearing me. This is Durka. Durka, jihad salam. You can't touch me because you think I'm haram. Durka, jihad Muhammad. Don't get him mad because then he might bomb us. All I ever wanted was to fit in. But from day one, my A1s meant I needed thick skin. It wasn't enough to watch Hillary Duff or Warnie's wrist spin. I was the sick kid. See, they'd say that the only reason I got straight A's was so I could learn to lay waste to this great place. Every scribble in my book was a bomb plot or a gunshot, so they'd best not let me get hot or I might just let off. My science diorama was an ode to Osama. Whole class goes bananas when it's brought up in drama. And they always found a way. Because of the nightly news that nobody thought was slightly skewed, I walked around so tightly screwed that knowing what's said to me might be rude. And it always was. I heard your dad's a terrorist. At first, it was unsettling. But then I started to believe them. You see, I got some advice that said, don't get mad, get even. If it's fear they wanted, then it's what I'd give them. They said I'm on a jihad, well, no quarter given. The stories that I used to write of misadventures and youthful nights now brimmed with bombs and jets in flight and all the ways that I would fight. It's funny. If not for the infidels, I wouldn't know the word infidel. From paradise, my parents fell to raise the devil in this hell. I started going to Saturday school, separate myself from all these fools. I learned of rivers flowing cool where I would swim if I followed the rules. Everything became moralistic. They're sick and twisted, but I'd been gifted. This religion picked and lifted me above the ones who'd missed it. I was different. I was better. With the righteous, stick together. keep my thoughts pure, on a tether. Eternal life is mine forever. But what about my friends? Didn't they have a chance? Well, they made a choice not to heed God's commands. And why would you want to be with them? Aren't they the ones who caused offense? In their defense, they didn't know what they said. Well, God will decide that when they are dead. Well, all I ever wanted was to fit in. But thinking and pigment was too big of a difference. It all started to sink in. But even religion would soon be relinquished, as questions unanswered made faith feel extinguished. And scene.
God fucking damn it, dude.
Well done.
Thank you.
That gives me chills every time I hear it.
Thank you for hearing it multiple
Goddamn.
times.
Goddamn.
So excited.
like it.
So goddamn excited for the full performance. MASH, where can they find it? I guess in the links below.
In the links below. Hit the links below. Fringe Festival, The Third Culture Kid, presented by Emkew. Thank you to JMC Academy. Thank you to Rights PR for getting on board and helping me get the word out. Thank you to everyone who's picked up tickets already. Thank you all. Thank you, Vibe Union, for supporting me. It's really exciting times.
Should also be noted that it's a streamed gig, is it not? So
That's
doesn't
right.
matter where you are in the world, you can catch it 100%.
Absolutely.
Which is gonna guys, thanks so
Shoot
much.
the hell in. What's
And
your
you absolutely
excuse?
Hell yeah.
Sorry.
See you
This has been an absolute
Get
treat. What a treat it has been. I've been Wrath, as always.
Or a trick or treat even.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry.
You
Halloween.
Halloween,
I gotta say.
you should be hosting. Damn, I'm dropping the ball. We got MQ, he's over here. We got Mikado over here. Catch everyone at the links. You know, there's the links on the screen. There's links down below. Catch us at Vibe Union on the YouTubes. We're putting out the music. There's some exciting things coming to Melbourne soon because we're going to be let out of our little cages. I'm kidding. It's absolutely necessary to be in our cages. Peace out, everybody. Big love from this guy.